Hi, I'm Dan Jones. I'm mobile editor at Light Reading here for OrbTV. We're here with Daryl Schoolar, who's from Ovum. He's the practice leader at Ovum, and we are talking Open RAN. Now, I didn't know much, well, not a huge amount about Open RAN before and Virtualized RAN before we kind of hit the show, and there's been a wealth of announcements around it. So can you just initially explain a little bit what about the concept is?
Sure. I'll start with virtual RAN. I mean, that's generally the concept of separating out part of the functions of the baseband unit and moving it into, say, a cloud or data center. So that's what really when they talk about virtualized. When you talk about virtualizing, it's not really making everything in the entire base station software, because really the radio itself will always be the radio. But really virtualizing some of the functions that we put back into the cloud that can allow it to eventually be redeployed in different architectures to open up other different services. And this intersects very nicely with what we've seen like around with the XRAN initiative or the ORAN initiative, generally under the umbrella of Open RAN, which is the idea of separating out, say, the radio from the baseband unit in terms of vendors, allowing operators really to choose a separate baseband unit vendor from a RAN, from the actual radio vendor. Because until now, the protocols that would connect the two together, the network interfaces and the protocols, were fairly proprietary and would lock you into one vendor. So if you bought radio from vendor A, you had to buy the baseband unit from vendor A.
That's the way they like it.
Yes.
So from the sounds of things, it's really going to change the competitive landscape, at least potentially.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, you could certainly look at, I'd say one of the first companies to think about is companies like Mavenir, Altiostar. These are not really, these aren't your major, top 3 RAN vendors in terms of anybody's market share reports today. But if you can split out those two portions of the network, it will give an opportunity for companies like them that specialize either in the radio or the baseband unit or virtualization, a chance to move more into that space. And even as you say you work up, you can see a company like both Samsung and Nokia Networks that made announcements with Verizon over the last 2 weeks of participating in that trial there. Chance where they are some of the maybe where they can gain more share themselves. And certainly though I think for the larger vendors, they're kind of at that point where it could be a risk of their market share where where even if the baseband unit might have only been, say, 30% of the RAN spend, they could possibly lose that 30%, or they could lose the 70% on the radio. So it certainly could put them in a more vulnerable position.
Right, so 5G and kind of network design becomes a real inflection point for all of these different kind of RAN vendors at that point then. Some will go up, some will go down.
Yeah. Certainly, yeah. I mean, it could definitely could change the impact of how the market share works out. But then also, like I said, the other part is about, changing the architecture itself of the network to eventually allow running new services. Because one of the things we've heard a lot of talk here about, if you step back, is like, what is the business case for 5G? It has to be developed, right?
Right.
I mean, I think everybody has their minds around, all right, enhanced mobile broadband. So, all right, so it's faster than what I got now.
Yeah.
Which is fine, but it's not really what's going to drive tons of revenue growth. And then there's fixed wireless access, which is new.
Yeah.
But for people who've been around long enough, this is not the first time fixed wireless access has come around.
Yeah, they tried it with like LMDF, if I remember.
Yeah, LMDF, WiMAX, I mean, you can do it with LTE, but it's a new revenue. But then there's that whole industrial part, people call it, industry verticals. That's where you start to really bring in the power of, say, the new radio and the power of virtualization, including the base station, where you can start talking about putting different network elements at different parts of the network to create those slices everybody's talking about, which then are needed to support those industries.
So that's interesting, because I mean, we've been talking a little bit about how, each generation of wireless is on like maybe a 10, 15, maybe even 20-year cycle sometimes. If we look out like 5, 10 years from now, are we going to see a different network topology?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think you're going to see part of that radio access network, instead of today being just kind of monolithic and being in one place, bits and pieces of it in different areas. Where if you can open up that RAN from the baseband unit, you could mix. You may be using vendor A for your radio and your baseband, say for your heavy load consumer traffic, but you might still use vendor A and say vendor B for say a specialized, say, healthcare, hospital application, something that doesn't need as much capacity as say the consumer market, but needs very special routing of certain protocols
Or
for critical
security,
decision. Yeah, certainly, just security, things of that nature.
Okay. So it's a much more kind of a tailored approach almost?
Absolutely, yes. That's a good way of putting
Right.
it.
Interesting. Well, it looks like a space to watch then.
Yes, certainly.
Okay. Thanks so much for your time, Daryl.
Thank you.
Thanks. And I've been Dan Jones for OrbTV with Light Reading.